now for the final award this morning. I call Mr. Frank Islam to present the King Legacy Award for Leadership and Public Service to the Honorable Steny Hoyer, Democratic Congressman from the state of Maryland.
So my job is to say a few words about Congressman Hoyer, who's a dear friend. He doesn't need any introduction, as you all know. So it's truly a privilege for me to introduce Majority Leader Steny Hoyer to receive the King Legacy Award for Leadership and Public Service. I say it is a privilege because Congressman Hoyer personified both leadership and public service. Throughout his career as a leader in public service, he has extended and expanded the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. In that regard, let me read you part of a statement the Majority Leader Hoyer released in July 2 of 2019 on the 55th anniversary of the signing of the Civil Rights Acts of 1964. In that statement, he says, and I quote, "In 2019, America's city remains segregated. Disparities continues in education and housing. Certain groups are still prevented from exercising the right to vote. It is up to us to build the legacy of the Civil Rights Act and other legislation and follow the example of those who brought them to fruition, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, Dorothy Height, and others. That is why the House Democrats are working to advance legislation to restore the Voting Rights Act and expand opportunity for all Americans." End of quotation. Those are not just the words. Congressman Hoyer knows that actions speak louder than words. That is why he not only follows the examples of others, he sets and serves an example of himself. He has accomplished through his leadership in both the national and international arenas. Here in the United States, he has done that hundreds of times over as a champion of civil and human rights. Let me just give you two exemplary examples. First, Congressman Hoyer was the lead House sponsor of the historic federal election reform bill, Help America Vote Act, which was signed into law by President George W. Bush in 2002. Second, he managed the passage of the American Disabilities Act with overwhelming approval in the House in 1990. That bill, which was signed by George S.W. Bush in that year, has helped millions of disabled Americans enter the workforce, achieve independence, and fully pursue the American dream. Congressman Hoyer's impact and influence in foreign policy and international affairs rivals his accomplishment in the United States of America. Most notably, he served as the chair and ranking Democrats on the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe. In those roles, he was a foremost advocate for the causes of human rights, individual freedoms, democracy, and religious liberties throughout the world. Those are just few noteworthy examples of Majority Leader Hoyer's leadership. Let me shift gears for just a moment and talk about his public service. Simply stated, public service has been his life's work. In 1966, he won a seat in the Maryland Senate at the age of 27. Just a few years later, at the age of 35, he was elected president of the Maryland Senate, the youngest ever in the state of Maryland's history. Congressman Hoyer was elected to the U.S. House in 1981. He's now serving his 20th term. It is not how long you serve in office that matters. What counts is what you accomplish there. Majority Leader Hoyer has always been in the front lines of making things happen, whether it was in civil rights and human rights or serving his Maryland constituents. His record of achievement speaks for itself. In closing, let me leave you with this final thought on Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. Mr. Hoyer nominated the late Congressman John Dingell for the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2014. In that nomination, he quoted President Lyndon B. Johnson, who, when he signed Medicare into law, stated, and I quote, "History shapes men, but it is a necessary faith of leadership that men can help shape history." End of quotation. Majority Leader Steny Hoyer is one of those men. He's a history maker and a history shaper. Throughout his career as a leader and a public servant, he has extended and expanded the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. He is truly deserving of this legacy award. Congratulations, Congressman Hoyer, for this award.
Dr. Maxwell, perhaps you can make a stop on Capitol Hill with that bus that you're going to take that award to New York on. I am so pleased to be here and so honored and humble to be given this award, not only in the name of Martin Luther King Jr., but also with the extraordinary recipients who have received this award today and who have received it in the past. Thank you very, very much. I am particularly pleased to be here with my dear friends, Frank and Debbie Islam. Frank Islam has been an extraordinary addition to the United States of America. And so many of you are examples of why America needs to accept people from around the world. The poet said that these were the wretched refuse of their teeming shores. The poet was wrong. We got some of the most extraordinarily courageous, entrepreneurial, risk-taking people in the world who came here. Martin Luther King Jr. would have welcomed them here. I want to thank Abby. Abby from Nigeria and UDC. And I want to say, Mr. President, I'm going to be putting legislation on the floor in the near term to make the university the state university. Abby, a beautiful dreamer. That's who we remember today and we honor today. Abby, I agree with Mr. Taylor. Extraordinary. Thank you very much. Now I want a full disclosure. Mr. Milliken made disclosure. I am between the ages of Dr. Maxwell and Taylor Taylor. I am, however, much closer to Mr. Milliken. Bill, I guess you and I are just about the same age. And Charlie Rangel used to say that I was born in Harlem. Now, I was born at 105th and 5th Avenue at Flower Hospital, so close enough for Charlie to say regularly, "This is my homeboy." So I'm pleased to be here with all of you. And Frank, I thank you for participating in having me receive this honor. And Debbie, thank you very much for being such a dear and great friend through the years. I want us all today, tomorrow, and for the days to come to bow our heads whenever we do that and pray to our God for the life and health of my friend John Lewis. John Lewis is facing a very deep challenge. John Lewis has faced every challenge of his life with courage and conviction, as he is doing today. But let us all remember him in prayer, that God may give him just a little bit longer to serve with us, to fight with us, to love with us. Bill, you're absolutely right. I've told Bill that I had that as part of my written speech, which you see I'm not going to give. Let me first say something about the Institute for the Advancement of Multicultural Minority Medicine, which is the overarching organization of which we are now participating. I don't know how many of you remember the name Lou Stokes. Lou Stokes is an African American from Cleveland, Ohio. He and I served together on the appropriations committee that funded NIH. I went on that committee in 1983 and served there for 23 years until I became majority leader of the House in 2007. And then I took a brief hiatus that was not planned for, but now I'm back. And during the course of some of the testimony we received from the Institute directors, we asked, what are the cohorts of your external and internal investigations? And we found the startling fact that for the most part, in large percentages, the cohorts were white males. Even in breast cancer, there was a majority of white males that were the cohorts. Lou Stokes was my dear friend, and we said to our colleagues at the NIH, that is not appropriate. That is not right. That will confirm the disparities between minorities' health and majorities' health. That was 1984 or 5 and 6. We kept working on it. Today, the disparities are stark still. Maternal child health in Prince George's County, a wealthy county, just miles from where we sit, is still disparate. 2 to 1 or more over the national average of maternal deaths in childbirth. Thomas Paine said, "These are the days that try men's souls." That was in the 1770s. The 1860s were days that tried men's souls. 1865 to 1965 were days that tried men's souls. And the great apostle of our democracy, Martin Luther King Jr., took us by the lapels and shook us and said, we are not living out the promise of that declaration that was quoted just a little earlier. These days, today, Martin would tell us, are the times that try men's souls and women's souls, here and around the world. Coretta Scott King said, "It is right and proper, and I appreciate your remembering Martin. But remembering Martin is not enough. Quoting Martin is not enough. These days are days that Martin would urge action. And yes, Bill Milliken, love. To not return hate for hate, incivility for incivility, anger for anger, but to try to lift up, reach out, and bring together. These are the times that try men's souls. And we all need to be Martins. And Dorothy Heights. I thank the Lord that I was able to meet Dorothy Height and spend a lot of time with her. What a magnificent woman. And I thank the Lord that I've been able to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge 15 times with my friend John Lewis, hand in hand, knowing that there would not be Alabama state troopers on the other side of that bridge to beat me, as John knew there surely would be. Most of us will not take a risk of life and limb to stand up for our principles, for our country, to try to banish from our country these tribulations that try our soul. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about the soul and character of our country. That is what is at risk today. We talk about issues in education and healthcare, disparities, crime, criminal justice reform, not having so many in our people in our prisons as Mr. Taylor pointed out, that we want to lift them up, give them jobs, include them in, make them better, give them hope. That's our Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. Not remembrance, though remembrance is proper, but action, which is absolutely essential to save the soul and character of our country and of our faiths. Thank you for what you do. God bless you.